Alright, now we're in the verbal section. Let's start with synonym questions. What does admonish mean? Admonish. So make a guess. I'll make one example sentence using admonish. So a teacher admonished her students against smoking. Or what does admonish mean in this sentence? Would the teacher encourage her students to smoke? That's absurd, right? She would stop them, right? She would try to tell not to smoke to her students because it's bad for their health, right? So admonish means warn against something. So to tell others not to do something because it's bad for them. So we are encountered with a very obvious answer, which is B. The rest of the answer just doesn't make sense. What about aloof? What does aloof mean? Do you know what attach means? Attach. Attach means to like join things together, combine things together, connect things together, right? The opposite of this is detach. It means to separate things, like to put something off. So when you're emotionally attached to someone, that means you feel very close to someone. You are in love or you feel this intimacy. And if you feel detached with someone, you feel very distant. If you're emotionally detached, you don't feel really close to someone. There's no intimacy and you feel very distant. And you do not share any emotional ties. And detach is very similar to aloof. So aloof means you are not attached, but you are rather detached emotionally with something or someone. So you do not have any emotional ties. You just don't care. You can't care less. So you are being very distant and you're very cool about something. So what's the most similar vocab for that? Indifferent should be our best option among these answer choices because indifferent also means you don't care, especially you don't have any emotional impact or you don't have any attachment to something. That's what indifferent stands for, and that makes indifferent synonym of aloof. So C is our answer. Okay, now we'll move on to analogy questions. Abolish is to end as, okay, here. What we have to try is to make a sentence using these two words. So, abolish and end means a similar thing. It's definitely not enough. We have to go a bit further than that. So, for example, in which sentences do you use abolish? Abolish is often used for political context, right? Or institutional context. Or some policy. When we discuss some policy, we often use abolish. So, for example, we abolish slavery. That's the most common usage of the word abolish. And what about the word end? End compared to abolish is a very general word. It can be used with anything. We can end a meeting. We also can end a slavery. Or we can end a certain event or class. Basically, anything can come after end. So, what's the difference between abolish and end? Abolish is rather formal and its usage is very specific compared to end. So, we do not abolish meeting, right? Abolish and meeting don't go well together. But compared to that, end goes well with almost anything. It can be used in any kind of context. But they share the core meaning. What's the core meaning of both words? They both stop something, right? They both stop something, but abolish does that in a particular context, while end does that in a way general context. So I'm going to define the relationship between the two as this. While abolish and end shares their core meaning, the first word, abolish, is used in a particular context, while the second word, the latter one, is used in a more broader and general context. And now I'm going to look for the set that shares this kind of relationship. Okay, let's start with A. Nurture is to keep. What does nurture mean? Nurture means to grow something, right? To foster something. So for example, if someone helps you nurture your skills, that means someone helped you to grow your skill, to improve your skill, right? But what does keep mean? Keep means, so if someone helps you to keep your skills, that's kind of awkward, but if someone helps you keep your skill, that means that someone prevent you from losing it. So prevent from losing something is very different from improving and growing something. So these words do not share the core meaning as abolish and do. So we should pass on A. And what about B? What does tarnish mean? Tarnish. Tarnish means being spoiled, spoil something, or make something dirty. That's what tarnish means. And what is metal? It's obvious. It's just a material, right? Like steel. And tarnish and metal, they do not share the core meaning. They're not related. What about C? When something originates from something, originate means something started to exist. And that's pretty much the same as when something begins. So I would say they share the core meaning. While originate is used in more formal and particular context, while begin, as you already know, can be used in all the possible contexts where you want to say something starts. So I think C is very similar to what the abolish is to end has between them. So the answer choice should be a C. And now we're going to look at another analogy question. Quarrel and disagree. So what does quarrel mean? Quarrel. Quarrel means to fight against with someone, right? But when you quarrel, that usually doesn't involve violence. Rather, you fight with someone else verbally. And you already know what disagree, right? Disagree means you do not meet an eye to eye with someone else. You think differently from others. So, what kind of relationships do they have? So again, you can't just go like, quarrel is similar to disagree. No, that's not true. Quarrel is not a synonym of disagree. We have to go a bit further. Well, how about this way? Can we say disagree is a cause of quarrel? Because when someone quarrels with one another, the reason behind the quarrel is often they disagree over something important for them. So they quarrel. So I can say this latter word, disagree, is a cause. And because of this latter word, this first word, quarrel, is happening. So this is the result, effect. So I would look for an answer choice that where the second letter serves as a cause of bringing about this first letter as an effect. Okay, now start with A. Cooperate is to participate. Can we say participate is a cause of cooperate? I don't think so. Participate means being involved, take part in. Cooperate means work together. Although they can happen at the same time, I would not say participate is what causes cooperate. So I don't think A is really an a good answer. And what about B? Gain is to filch. So what does filch mean? Filch. Filch means like stealing something, but nothing really serious. So for example, let's say you're hungry, so you decided to grab a just small tiny cookie from someone's table. That's of course stealing, but that's nothing really very serious. It's not like felony, right? So that is called filch. And is filch a cause of gain? I don't think so. Filch is not a cause of gain. Maybe if you steal something really huge or valuable, that can be counted as like a significant gain, but we usually don't consider just grabbing a bite of one small tiny chocolate cookie as a gain, right? And what about C? Temper and argue. So is a temper cause of argue? You have to be really careful here. So some of you might think, right, isn't a temper that causes argue? But can we also say, since you argue with someone, you gotta have a but it can work vice versa. So for example, when you argue with someone, sometimes you become to have a temper. So it's not always temper causes argue. Rather, arguing can cause you being tempered, or temper does not necessarily, so for here, disagree is a cause of quarrel, and if you do not disagree, there's no reason for you to quarrel, right? But C, if you do not have a temper, it's still possible for you to argue, right? So compared to the relationship the quarrel and disagree have, the relationship argue and temper have is very different. So you need to still look over D and E as a potential answer choices. What about D? What does admire mean, admire? Admire is to look upon someone and like respect and desire to be the same or similar, respect. And what does praise mean? Basically, praise means saying good words because you think he or she deserves to be you praise someone because you believe he or she well deserves that or a certain kind of prize or reward because they've done something good or something excellent. So can we say admire is a cause of praise? Well, I think that's possible because if you admire someone, that means you really love what he or she has done. So that often causes you to praise, right? And if you do not admire, maybe you do not have any reason to praise because you don't consider their work or what they've done really impressive. So I think praise to admire shares a quite similar relationship that quarrel and disagree have. So I think D is the best option that we got among here. Okay.